All right, so here we are, and we have now four of us. Caitlin has joined us, who I think will add quite a lot. She had some pretty exciting links today, and I'm first today. So I've got a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I get to be a fascist again. This is, so Israelis got this text message today. You have been near someone sick with coronavirus. We have detected this. You must now isolate yourself. But just automatically generated, they're automatically spying on everyone's GPS location and determining this, which sounds pretty good, but the problem is, of course, GPS location is spectacularly inaccurate, so a lot of this is probably wrong. But anyway, a lot of people are talking about this, and supposedly companies have sold coronavirus detecting cameras to the US that scan everybody as they walk by and decide if they have a fever, and then in principle, you can do something about it, like send them a text alert or arrest them or send a drone over to yell at them or exterminate them or something. And these guys are trying to sell this data. These guys, KinSQ or whatever this thing is, they have a thermometer you use to measure your temperature, and it puts it all in an online database, and then they put it all on a map. And they have determined what a percentage of people with fevers is above normal, and it looks like the coronavirus is much bigger in Florida than anywhere else, if you believe this thing. However, when you look at the actual data, I'm less inclined to believe it. That's not what I would call a very large deviation from the expected number of fevers. And it's the difference between the dotted line and the red line that is supposedly being mapped here. But anyway, it is an interesting issue here. I was just listening to the Pivot podcast, and Scott Galloway is a professor about my age and seems to be about as fascist as me. And he says, you know, this is probably a time to quit worrying about your civil rights concerns and accept that we have an emergency here and we ought to be using this technology to like track down the cases.
Well, I hope there's not a lot of old people in Florida, because that would be bad.
Yeah, that would be bad. And I hope there's not a lot of young people partying, ignoring the problem.
Yep.
And the governor of the state ignoring the problem. But anyway, it's, of course, I wonder if it's just sunny and warm in Florida, and that makes the numbers higher, but you know, it's, it is an interesting issue, and I think other nations are in fact doing this, using technology to track down the people with fevers and lock them up and such. But we'll see what comes of it all.
That's not scary at all.
Well, you know what's scary is us all dying of the plague. You know, I think this is less scary. However, I'm usually pro-fascist among these groups.
Google and Facebook have been in talks with our government to sell, you know, quote unquote, anonymized user data to track our proximate location, track our location data and proximity to other people that might have it. And, you know, I'm of two minds on this. On one hand, it could be a useful tool in helping people like isolate out that, you know, vectors and figuring out who they've come into contact with. Yeah. On the other hand, you know, how could this possibly be misused? I can think of a few ways.
If it hasn't already.
I think that we have to be careful with this kind of thing because you know, it's really open to algorithmic bias. And a lot of the time it's, you know, people who are economically disadvantaged or other, you know, disenfranchised groups end up kind of paying the price on this stuff. So
I think all that is true, but I think the current emergency overrides all such concerns.
I'm reminded
and also is the length of this. Because I think it was the WHO who said this was going to be an 18-month event.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the CDC, one or the other said that this might be running for 18 months. So how much data are we going to aggregate together, and what are we doing with it?
Right. I mean, this is from what I understand, the scenario is going to look something like this. So we're in kind of crisis mode right now, and then sometime over the summer we're going to kind of step back and be okay for a little bit while it takes over the southern hemisphere. And then next winter is when it's going to really strike back really hard. And that's when we're going to have the really big cases show up and the real brunt of the epidemic.
That's what I've seen, predicting from the early 1900s Spanish flu. And also the other thing is everything we're doing now is nothing. The people that have really seriously locked down, like South Korea and Singapore, have actually stopped it. And to that extent, China. And so I think what America needs to do is much more extreme action, much faster. It is not the time to worry about details. It is the time to have much larger, powerful reactions.
Well, you know, one of the reasons South Korea has done so well is because they really prepared for this after SARS happened, and they set up a massive lab network so that they could be prepared to test for these things, because it requires like basically a DNA sequencing situation, and only certain labs can perform those tests. So part of the reason they did so well is because they were prepared for it. And I hope that, you know, one thing that this serves as a wake-up call for us, because if we get the infrastructure in place to deal with these things, then we're going to be prepared. You know, like Caitlin said, if a second wave comes and it's much more severe, we'll be much better prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, it's all true. Well, anyway, I might as well go on to Elizabeth's link here. We got one about.
Yeah, this is a pretty good story, and not least because it refers to an FBI agent whose presumably his real name is Chris Hacker.
Oh, very good.
I like Robert.
That's not the only reason I picked the story, but it didn't hurt. I thought that this was pretty good just in terms of its massive reach. I mean, this was a pretty big ring of people that had like some pretty, you know, we've all heard of the scams that they were using, like the romance scam. And it's funny because I learned a new term, just like we're not supposed to call email spam anymore. We're supposed to call it unsolicited
commercial email.
Yes. Well, this one had a new one in it, which is business. They called it a BCE scam. So it was like, what was it here? Business email compromise, BEC, which is essentially like successful phishing. And in this case, they managed to get people to wire money. It's just like the old 419 scams, basically. And they also hit people's retirement accounts, which is pretty sad. But
business email compromise, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean they were pretty successful, and they had a real huge haul of money. So you know, and a lot of people that were victimized were retirees. So this was it was pretty interesting. I thought this was a pretty interesting story, just in the depth of it.
Yeah, and these people were, I guess, the money mules that shuttled it around among their accounts to try to hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm glad to see him busting these guys. Been going on for a long time.
Yeah, basically it was a Nigerian scammer ring that had set up in Atlanta and entrenched themselves to be fairly successful over time. And you got to think too, you know, the one thing that occurred to me out of this was that this had to have gone on for quite some time. Because it was pretty sophisticated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and we got a Mirai botnet.
Yep, just another. We have another variant targeting specific NAS devices. Just one of those things of keep your stuff up to date, because just because we're in a pandemic doesn't mean life just stops. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like too easy to make homework out of it. Anyway.
Yep.
And here's one of Caitlin's.
Oh, yes. Is this the reverse? Oh, yes. Who's hacking the hackers?
Yeah.
So apparently, there are hacking tools on torrent sites and whatnot, and hackers are putting backdoors into this pirated software that is used for hacking. So essentially what's happening is that the hackers are hacking the hackers. And there's the best part is the name of this group that put out the malware. They're called, if I can scroll down here, it's they're called Reversing the Noobs, RTN.
Yeah.
So if you are downloading pirated software for your InfoSec career and you notice that it's being put out by Reversing the Noobs, you might want to get rid of that ASAP. But yeah, that is very, very, on the one hand, it's predictable. On the other hand, it's very funny that we are kind of hacking each other, essentially.
Well, I heard where they targeted the people that went to security conferences because they're high value targets.
Right.
It does make sense. And obviously they're vulnerable. I know most people on their attack boxes, they're not thinking about security at all.
Right. One thing I've noticed a lot is that, oh, go on.
I said those boxes tend to be the least secure because you don't want to worry about that kind of stuff.
Right. I mean,
everything.
In the InfoSec community, I've noticed that some of the most insecure boxes are the ones that we control. And you would hope that us in the field would know how viruses work and how malware spreads. But like the name of the group implies, Reversing the Noobs, I think a lot of this stuff is aimed more towards newer people just getting into InfoSec rather than the professionals who can probably afford the tools instead of pirating them.
Yeah, and these look like pretty newbie tools like Havij and stuff.
Yeah.
No pro would be using anyway.
So I take it these people haven't heard of GitHub.
Yep. Well, that's a good one. That's sort of poetic justice there.
It's poetic justice. Thank you. Yes, that's the perfect way to put it.
And here's a do-it-yourself, which I think could be a hit. So here she is. You make your own masks, and then hospitals have asked us. The CDC has issued an order. They totally can't have enough masks, and the modern masks are paper and throwaway, and they can't get them because, of course, China bought them all up, and we didn't get prepared. So they want to go back to the previous recommendation from decades ago, where you would use cloth masks, which you can sterilize and reuse. And they want all the amateur people at home to be sewing these masks, and so they made the patterns available. This woman is a hacker type. She made 150 in the last few days, and everybody is supposed to sew. They are setting up sewing rooms in the hospital, making them like an assembly line. And and the thing, of course, as usual, I'm the evil person around. The first thing I thought is all the people that are out of a job could be making these and selling them on the street. You could totally stand outside Safeway and sell these things for $10 each and make a pile of money. Anyway.
It's just like you, Sam, to try to profiteer off an epidemic.
That's right. That's why I was talking to people about this. And I said, some of my students in class were saying, why isn't the government saving us? And I said, well, we're not a socialist country. The government is completely useless. It always has been. It's especially more useless now. The feds are nowhere. The thing that will save us is capitalism. If you could make some kind of pill that would save you, or if a garment that would help, you could make so much money selling it. I expect Amazon is expanding into healthcare. They bought CVS. So all they got to do is give out free paper towels, toilet paper, face masks, or some kind of cure for joining it. And everybody in the world would join, and they would love them, and they'd make money, money, money. And that's what Americans can do. I think capitalism is our route to salvation, not the government. But anyway.
The only problem is that we seem to believe in, we might not be socialists, but we are corporatist.
Yeah.
The bailout money.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Well, I mean, the bailout money that the package that they promised to Wall Street is like enough to pay for universal health care also. So
no, I don't think so. It needs 50 trillion for that. That's what Bernie said and Elizabeth Warren said. This is 2% of the money. Anyway, but anyway, we'll see where it all goes. But I think certainly, I think we all can see now that expecting the feds to do anything to save us is the same as just shooting yourself in the head. Whether you like it or not, they are totally not there for us. And we should look elsewhere. Anyway, let's see what we got here. Oh, these guys promised to be good. They're going to stop being nasty and start being good.
Yeah, that's mighty generous of them. Supposedly, they are going to stop attacking healthcare organizations with ransomware. Only, I'm going to drop this link here in the chat. Just a little while ago, I stumbled across this other article here that basically one of the ransomware outfits that they mentioned in the article actually is hitting healthcare providers and dumping patient records. So,
Neat. When I saw that article, my first thought is they don't actually control their targets. They send this spam out. Somebody clicks on the link. They don't really control it very much, do they? Anyway.
They just let it out into the wild and go, oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they do, at least in the other article I was reading, they definitely do lock it all, and then they have to either pay or prove that they're hospital or whatever to get the decryptor. So
save this so I can add it to the links. That's a good to show that they've already broken their promise.
Yeah, it was interesting though. They did mention in the other articles that they didn't care and they were definitely going to go after big pharma.
Yep.
Because they're making tons of money. So
what I'm hearing is we should make a fake hospital, let it get ransomware, say we're a hospital, get the decryptor, so now we can reverse engineer it.
That's a good idea.
I like that idea.
Yeah. It should also be noted right now that scammers are on the rise and using the coronavirus as a way to increase their scammability. Yep. Just today, I actually got two people trying to scam me. One of them was very bold. They claimed they were Apple and that they had access to my account. And I was But yeah, no, scammers are sending out things like phishing emails with the coronavirus because they know that we want to know what's going on with COVID-19.
Yep.
So they're sending out these emails en masse with links in them and getting people's passwords. And yeah, be careful.
Well, this, I think, is the heart of social engineering. And I think it also explains Trump's incredible success because he can just contradict everything. Like now he claims that he was totally behind stopping the epidemic all along when he totally wasn't. But I think the thing is you get people upset and then they don't think, and you can just shove any kind of lie at them and their brain is shut down.
Yep.
He's the greatest social engineer in the world is Trump. I mean, he took over the whole free world by just tricking people. He's the world's expert at it. He deserves to be headlining at DEF CON and stuff.
In fact, I think Irvin's next story is about that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is exactly that.
Okay.
Cyber criminals are pretending to be the WHO and giving out fake ebook that's just spam and malware.
Yeah.
So yes, it's on the rise. Yeah.
And I guess you'll click on the link. Okay.
Right, you click the link and you get the mouse spam.
Yep. Well, that makes sense. This is how you do it.
Yep.
We red teamers should all take note. That's why I thought if you wanted to do it at City College, you would make it something about layoffs or something about the parking lots or something else that will get people all upset.
Right.
All right. And now we got, well, this one looks awesome. I totally have to make a project out of this.
Oh, you absolutely should. And I'll tell you why. So I chose this article for two reasons. One, it's a vulnerability in a quote unquote secure application, a secure browser. This is the secure, a vast secure browser has a local vulnerability where what the browser does is it tries to set pretty much like admin permissions on a file. And if you set that file to be a hard link, you can essentially use that application to set admin privileges on any file you want, including one an attacker controls. And this is hot right now. If you want a CVE, here's what you do. Open up Procmon and just look at all your applications and see if any of them are sending out any requests for any files to increase their privileges. And then track that and then create a hard link. And you will have a CVE. You will have lots of them. This is really huge right now, this type of bug. And so all these applications are coming out of the woodwork of having these essentially privilege escalation bugs using hard links. And this one, like I said, is...
Yet?
Excuse me?
Did you get any CVEs yet?
I have not. I've been very busy at work. With the coronavirus, we realized that we had no way of doing instant response at people's houses when we can't get to their computer.
Oh,
So you can imagine how busy I've been. But no, this is a big bug right now that
oh,
has
yeah.
been overlooked.
Yeah, it looks like fun. Yeah.
Yes, good, clean fun, and you should totally make a project out of it. It's all over the place,
Yeah, I totally should.
lots of applications.
Well, now I
Yep.
have the greatest link I've seen in weeks is Tot Waffles. So he's talking about how to cook at home. So you take tater tots, see, and then you nuke them to defrost them, and then you cram them in a waffle iron like this, and then you slam it down and cook it for far longer than you should. And while that's happening, you prepare the topping, which is syrup chup, half maple syrup and half ketchup. And now if you cook them enough, they'll be solid enough that you can move them out without them shattering. And now you can make this glorious thing. So it's bloody awesome.
Have you?
Greatest thread I've seen in a long time. I think I don't have the equipment or the desire, but I very much appreciate this. I think now is the time for Tot Waffles.
Yes.
Especially because it's a great pun.
That's also, yes. And then here's Liz has the people in the cruise ship right around here. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're refusing their tests. They're actually have been encouraged to refuse testing, and they're being turned loose without being tested. So next week, that's going to be pretty interesting.
Why did they tell them not to get the test? They said they didn't have enough tests and couldn't afford it or something?
They encouraged them not to get tested if they were asymptomatic, which is insane. After having told everyone that they were going to test them. And then they told people if they had it, then they'd have to be in quarantine longer, which makes sense. So even people who had symptoms were allowed to refuse testing.
Yeah.
And did, because they want to get out and go home. So
Wow.
This
seems totally insane to me.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
And this is like letting everybody still crowd on the beaches and party in Florida. This is why we need a much stronger response.
Well, and this is the federal government doing this too, which just mind-blowing to me.
Well, I think as usual, the federal government officials don't actually get any orders. Just tweets come out at random and they have no idea what they're supposed to do, no training, no rules. So they just make up some random thing based on whichever tweet they read. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. And so here's something from Tor. People that know about this stuff.
Yeah, a blog that I saw. They're like others trying to give out good tips for people to be safe while working remotely. So they're saying things like, hey, you could use Nextcloud if you want to use an alternate to G Suite, the Tor browser, Signal for texting, Onion Share. Just simple tips, a good old little PSA.
Yeah, good secure channels. In the security community, I've seen in the last few days, a bunch of people are screaming and yelling about how you don't need VPNs because everything is HTTPS. I'm not sure what to make of that. The main reason I use a VPN is to get past all the content blocking, but a lot of people are saying people don't need a VPN if they work at home. I'm not so sure of that, but it's an interesting argument.
Yeah, I would not agree that the VPN is not necessary if you're at home.
Yeah, I know I got hacked at DEF CON because I didn't use a VPN and I was using HTTPS, but Google didn't always use HTTPS at that time and I didn't know that. So I don't know. And now that I do, so many mobile apps do not validate HTTPS. So the HTTPS is in fact not secure. So I think I'm tending to agree with you. VPNs are still necessary.
Yeah.
Anyway, and the last one here. Oh yeah, there's another great one from Caitlin. Embezzling with Amazon. What a great idea.
Oh yeah. No. So it turns out there's a really easy way to embezzle money if you're a disgruntled employee and you're working in information technology. What you can do is you can create these Amazon machine images. And the idea is that creators can create machine images like, say, a container for WordPress that you can deploy really easily. And then for your efforts, you might ask for like $1 per day or something if other people are using it. well, why not just create a base Windows 2016 image, right? Ask that you be paid like $2 a day if you use it, and then deploy it around your entire company. And what ends up happening is that the company now pays a little bit extra to Amazon, and then the IT person then funnels that extra money that went to Amazon into their own account, and it's all good, clean fun.
This is amazing.
It's a cute trick, but the problem is you're leaving an indelible trail pointing right back to you. You're going to get caught.
Well, you might get caught if you work at a place like I did with clueless IT department and clueless management. Chances are you probably aren't going to get caught.
Well,
yeah, and keep in mind the bill will only say this is going to Amazon. It's not going to say this is going to Amazon and your old security person or old IT person.
I worked at a place that thought that it was a reasonable expense to host a small Mongo database that was costing them over $300 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, when I said you could really reduce this overhead here, they said, oh, well, we do so much business. We're such a big company that we don't really care. So.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that. I remember the one that got my attention last week was there was a city college trustee who had been embezzling money by just taking there's a 3-letter acronym for the government agency he worked on, and he just added letters in front and the end of it so it looked like his name, and cashed checks, and he stole $500,000 that way before anybody noticed.
That's amazing.
And 20 years ago when I was in Illinois, the University of Illinois in Chicago, the head of the alumni fund stole millions of dollars by simply taking the alumni checks and writing the checks to car dealers, people selling mint coins, prostitutes, casinos, just right from the alumni fund with only one signature when they were supposed to have 2. And this just went on for years before anybody noticed.
Wow.
But when they finally notice, you're toast. You've totally left a paper trail pointing right back to you.
Right.
Anyway, I guess that's it. Are there any more comments?
I have, since we have so much bad news, I have a little bit of eye bleach for folks. I put the link there in the chat.
You think eye bleach is good news?
Yeah. I think sometimes you need it. And I feel like there's got to be a wall of sheep joke in here somewhere. But I could just watch this for hours.
Oh, I do like this. When I was a medical researcher, there was an issue with animal testing, and there was people who would do experiments on cats where they would put like a plunger and push the cat out so they have to jump and choose which of the panels they're jumping to is closer. And there was one person who thought that was unethical. So she developed this stuff, which is 50% peanut butter and 50% cod liver oil. And cats love this. So she would stand at the top of a staircase and the cats would bound up the staircase to get some of that. And then they put like patterns on the staircase and see which ones they can see and jump on. So she had the cruelty-free animal testing where they are running towards a reward instead of being shoved down a hill.
That's awesome.
It was like this. There was a guy that did it with bees too. He found that if you put 10% sugar outside then bees will flock to it. And if you move it like an inch every couple hours, they will find it wherever it is. And if you lower it down to like 2%, new bees won't bother with it, but the old bees that have learned where it is will keep following it. So he gradually moved it into his house, and then he'd have a bunch of trained bees that would fly wherever it was. And then he put like an obstacle course of moving walls and tubes and stuff, and he could measure in their flight pattern whether they could see the stuff on the wall or not. This is the way to test bee vision in a cruelty-free way. Anyway.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Liz, for making my day complete.
Yeah, this is a good one. Yeah, I'll add that to the link too. That's definitely a good one. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.